Hello and welcome. This is a video mostly for parents of children who are concerned about video games, but it's also applicable to pretty much everyone who wants to know about these things about video games. And we're going to kind of discuss the positive, what's good about video games, and really what you can do for your children who are interested in playing video games and you have concerns or worries about them. So we're going to start out, like I said, the positives are the best thing to start out with. So if you look around, we're going to pan around, show where we're at. This is a game called Hitman 2, and a level called Isle of Seagal. And if you'll notice, one of the things I often notice when I play games is just how beautiful the games are. Essentially, this is a work of art, but a work of art you can, through an avatar, run around in and be inside this work of art and kind of look at it from different perspectives, see different things about what's going on and the game. So it is kind of a cool thing to explore, and it gives, I think, people an appreciation of art. But also, like all good entertainment, books, movies, radio dramas, whatever you want, it gives you a chance to go places that you would never go, whether it's an imaginary island like this island is, or whether it's a historical time period, or just a city or town or a place you've never been to. Video games gives you a chance to explore them through, an avatar or a character you're playing as. And it's a great, it's a positive thing. You get to expand your horizons, explore the world around you, which is always a good thing. And that's the first of the happy and the positives. But, let's talk about what video games actually do for people. So, the first thing about video games is that they are problem solving. They present challenges and you have to solve them. Now, some of these are super obvious. There are puzzle games where the whole point is, we have a problem, let's go solve it. Those are obvious, but even games like this, you have certain problems, like getting into areas that you normally would not be allowed to get into. You would have to put on a disguise, as I put on the maintenance disguise at the moment, and this allows me access to most areas on this level. But, as you play through the game, there are areas you won't be able to get to, so you have to find a disguise, put on disguise, and then they let you into other areas. So you have to find the right disguise, you have to figure out how to get there. And that's just an example of some of the simple problems that you are presented in this game that you have to go about in solving. So it increases problem-solving skills, intelligence, and that sort of thing. So all of which is a positive within the game. So another thing that they offer are moral dilemmas. Now, Hitman itself, this isn't all games, but a lot of games offer some moral dilemmas. Like, you're presented with a moral challenge, and it's like, how do I solve it? What do I do? And you get to see the consequences of the challenges played out. I'm going to use Fallout as an example, although I don't normally play Fallout games. But, Fallout has a really complex moral system to it, where you go through the game and you're presented with a wide variety of choices, and the immediate consequences of the choices aren't apparent to you, but they change the dynamics of the game. So if you choose to, say, steal from someone, that person, as the game goes on, that person, or if they're working for an organization, will no longer trust you and won't help you out if you need their help later on in the game. Things like that are presented oftentimes with consequences, and the beauty of them is that the consequences oftentimes are not, like I said, immediate. You don't always know where the problems, where your choices will lead you. But oftentimes, these choices will have a negative consequence. Basically, simple, more moralistic problem. If you do something bad, there will be a negative consequence. If you do something good, there will be a positive consequence. And with video games, you get to see these consequences played out in a way that wouldn't be nearly as detrimental to you if they were being played out in real life. So if you stole in real life, there would be some serious consequences for doing that. And the consequences could play out in vastly negative ways in your life. But if they're done through video games, then suddenly these negative consequences will only be apparent within the video game.
Nothing for you past here, sir.
So I'm not allowed to go past there. So, you know, if negative things happen in the game, well, it's just a game. But if negative things happen to you in real life, there are real consequences to you, your livelihood. I mean, if you steal in real life, you're subject to criminal charges. You could be arrested. You could go to prison. There are all these things that could happen to you if you were to steal in real life. Whereas in video games, they show you that there are consequences to actions without the consequences actually hitting or affecting you. So there's someone who recognized that I'm not who I claim to be. So that's a consequence right there. So now I have to get away from him. So like I was saying, there are all these little consequences that often do happen in games, and you have to work through them, figure them out. And it helps you figure out real life. Figure out how consequences in real life will work and help you.
Where do you think you're going?
So, those are a few of the positives. Now, I'm going to... Okay, I'm not allowed in here, or I'm not supposed to be in here. So, one of the positives... Now, this is a thing that's controversial, so I will present this as both a positive and negative. So, as you see, I have a gun, and one of the things that are taught in games is the basics of shooting. Now, it's very generalized basics of, like, okay, point, shoot, okay, that's where you see it. Now, crosshair doesn't appear in real life, and, you know, essentially, he's holding the gun the wrong way. Unless you're really, really good with guns, that's not how you hold a gun. So, as we can see, that it teaches you very generalized, but doesn't teach you safety, doesn't teach you how to clean guns. I wish a game would teach you how to clean guns, because, you know, a lot of people don't know that. But so, basic safety procedures with guns aren't taught. Just a generalized idea of how to aim is taught in games, and it gives you a basic thing, and that can, you know, but you are required, if you want to learn how to use guns, to go to a gun range, learn how to shoot, do all of those things to learn, but it gives you the basics behind it, which could be good or it could be bad, depending on the perspective. So, an interesting story I'd like to share about this. This one really has nothing to do with me. You know, I'll just come straight up. This is not my story, per se. This is something I discovered on Twitter. So, a lot of stuff has been happening with shootings and so on, and video games have gotten the blame, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this video, is to present to people that there are positives to video games as opposed to merely just having negatives to the game. And so, some of the positives... So, like I said, let me get back and start telling this story that this guy told. So, he was a guy who was a gamer for many, many years, and he had worked in a job... He had played games with shooting and had worked in a job where he felt it was a good idea to, you know, get a gun just for his own protection, for his own safety, to grab a gun and to just buy a gun and own a gun for his own safety. And he actually owned it for quite a while before a friend of his said, hey, you really need to go out shooting, learn how to use it, learn how to shoot it. And he says, oh, okay, that's fine. So he went out with his friend and went through, like, the whole safety, the training, all that stuff. He went out and did. And, you know, when he got home, he was feeling very, very uncomfortable around the gun, even though he just learned how to shoot it. And he spent a long time analyzing his feelings, trying to figure out, you know, why do I feel uncomfortable? What's the problem here? And he finally, after thinking on it for quite a while, he finally figured out that the problem was that he he had just come to the realization that the gun wasn't a toy, and it wasn't, it wasn't like the guns he had in video games, where, you play a level, you shoot somebody, you come back, and that person is suddenly alive again. It's not like that. With a gun, it's a real dangerous thing. You shoot somebody, and somebody will die. And he came to that realization after, getting the knowledge and experience of actually shooting. And it's, I'll say sickened is probably the right word. It upset him enough that he was able to, realize that, hey, shooting in video games is different than shooting in real life. And there was, once he had experienced both, he was able to tell the difference. And I think most people who can tell the difference, if you have the ability to tell the difference between what is fiction and what is real, then you don't really have trouble distinguishing between, say, a real gun and a fictional gun within this a video game. You have no problem assessing that or making that distinction. And most people who play video games, even shooters and so on, don't have a problem distinguishing the reality from the fantasy. And as such, they are able to, it's recognizable. They can keep playing this game, but still be sickened when, somebody goes out, when shootings happen in real life. They can still be sickened when, just by using a real gun, they can still recognize that it's a dangerous weapon that could actually kill someone, as opposed to, a video game gun that doesn't really do anything of the sort. So I'm hoping I'm making that point as well as I can, but so long as you can distinguish fiction from reality, then you're not going to have a problem. At least not in the, in the same way. And most people who play video games have no desire to actually use guns in real life, like the example I was giving. This person, when faced with the reality of using a gun versus the, fantasy, the fiction of using a gun in a video game, was, sickened by it. He was appalled. Because there is a big difference.
Hello.
And most people can distinguish that. So those are, the positives of video games. And kind of jumping into the idea that video games, that people can tell the difference in video games between what's real and what's not real. And that's the biggest point here, is that video games are not real, and as long as people retain the ability to tell the difference between fantasy and reality, it's not going to make people more violent. It's not going to make people want to shoot up the real world. So, how do we keep that from happening? How do you make sure your own kids or people you're taking care of retain this ability to distinguish between fiction and reality? And how do you let them play games and stay safe? So here are just some suggestions for parents, for caretakers. So first and foremost, ratings are there for a reason. Look at the ratings. Look at what they actually say, the content that are in the games. Look very carefully at that. If you feel the game's excessively gory, if you feel that you don't want your children exposed to nudity, excessive gore, or if it just seems like the game just seems really, really gross, just make a note of that. Let people know that, hey, this is, just say, no, this is not an appropriate game to have in my home. And keep going from there. You can... So I think that's important. Just make sure you know what's in the game, the content and so on. The rating system's a very good way to do that. So number 2, take an interest in what your kid is playing. If your kid wants to tell you about this cool thing they did in the game, even if you don't fully follow it or you're not sure you're very interested in it, it's still important that you share your child's interests with them and that you pay attention and they know that you're interested in what they're playing and in what they're doing in these games. And I would suggest that you actually play a lot of these games with your children. Hitman isn't one of these games, but there are many games that are multiplayer where you can play as one of the characters in the game, along with your kid. More than one person can play, I should say. And yeah, do that with your kid. Play these games with your kid. Be with them when they play, at the very least. That way they will be interested, they will know you're interested, and they're more likely to talk to you about what happens in the games, what's going on, and you're more likely to see any sort of danger or red flags or danger signals. You're likely to know things like that if you take the interest, if you take the time to be with your kid to do this. But also, now, set boundaries. Number 3 is set boundaries, and that's, I think, really, really important. If you set boundaries for your children while you play these games. So, time limit, saying, okay, you can play for an hour, after you do your homework, you can play for an hour. Things like that, and, they should be flexible boundaries that you set. So if the kid says, oh, can I get to can I if you say, hey, it's time for bed, and they say, oh, can I play till the next level, can I just finish this level, be flexible and say, yeah, that's fine, let them finish the level, let them continue playing in that regard. And that will help you and help them. And I'll always be around when the kid's playing the video game. It's when, especially with online games. So that helps you know what's in the game, for one, but also it helps. It's with online games, you'll have a good idea of who they're interacting with, and what's going on with the community. There was a story told by a mother who was around her kid, and the kid got actually banned from playing, I want to say, Fortnite, and and it turns out to be completely trolling, because the mother was around when her kid was playing, and as such, was in and out of the room while the kid was playing, and was in a public enough space that she knew what the kid was doing, and the kid got accused of using some pretty foul language while playing the game, as well as doing other things, just saying some things that were very inappropriate.
You'll need to disable the system to get at the necklace,
so
47.
Because she was in and out, she knew her kid had not done that, but had she not been in and out, it would have been difficult for her to have related or talked about this, because so what the kid was accused of. Okay, I'm not telling this story well, because so many people are noticing me right now. But so the kid was accused of using foul language, and basically calling people names and so on, and that was against the policies of Fortnite, and got a strike or a temporary ban against the kid. Now, when she responded that no, this kid had not done that to the creators basically say, we have this on record, you can't appeal this, we are saying this. But because, one, she knew her son really well, and two, she had been in and out of the room when he was playing, she knew he had not said these things. But had she not been doing that, she would not have been able to, say definitively that, hey, my kid did nothing wrong. And this is how I know that they didn't do anything wrong. And you know, the parent...
Excuse me.
Nope, not allowed back there. And so that's why it's so important. So even though the temporary ban still stood in place for the kid, and the kid was unable to play the game, at least the kid had the comfort of knowing that, you know, one, his mother believed him, that he had done nothing wrong, and two, you know, he knew that he was in the right, and that, you know, that's just a very important thing to know, that you're in the right, that you had done nothing wrong in this regard, and that your mother believes you. That's very important to know these things when you're a kid, and when you're trying to, you know, you always want to impress your parents. That's pretty much a given. But, you know, the mother would have, you know, had the mother not been as involved in her child's life, she would not have known that the accusations were just other people being trolls, basically, online, and tattling. That's the word I was looking for. Tattling on this kid when he had done nothing wrong. And let's see what's back here. Staircase, which could lead anywhere. So that's, at least for the kid, that's a very important thing, a very important part of their lives. Just knowing that their parents believe them, and that that they can be trusted. And because the parent was so involved with her child's life, she was able to, you know, definitively say, you know, that, hey, the people are wrong, I believe you, and know that the child completely believed her. And that's, it's important for the relationship, and I think that's a very important consideration, something very important to take into consideration when you're dealing with children and video games. So just be around the kid, monitor the kid, your kid, when they're playing, and just know who they're talking to and who they're playing with, because, yeah, there's a lot of negative stuff happens online. It's sad truth, but it really does. And if you're involved with your kid's life, you can prevent these negative things from happening. And so I think that's probably one of the most important things. Just be involved with your kid's life. Know what they're playing. Be interested in what they're playing. Let them tell you about what they're playing. And that will help you a lot. And make sure that if the characters in video games are doing things that aren't approved of in your family, that the kids know that, hey, this may be okay for them, but it's not approved in our family. So to give an example, when I was a kid, I really liked the James Bond movie, the Sean Connery, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, all those old James Bond movies I really, really enjoyed. But one thing that kind of bothered me, because it was against how I was being raised, was the fact that James Bond would always, sleep around, would always have a different girlfriend, would never seem to be loyal to one woman. That always bothered me on a level, and my mother, when I was young, just said, well, if I was James Bond's mother, he wouldn't be doing that. And that kind of made me realize, okay, he's a different person. Even if I don't agree with what he does, I can still enjoy the movies. And same with video games. Just, if the video game character is doing something that you don't approve of, and makes your child uncomfortable, or to a certain extent, you can say, well, I'm not this person's mother. If I were, they wouldn't be doing this sort of thing. And you can help them understand that people might have a different view, a different way of seeing things, or a different morality, or whatever it is that's bothering you about what the character's doing. So anyway, that was my take on this whole video game controversy, and really the benefits of video games, and what you can do to help protect yourself and your children. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe if you like this. I will see you in the next video. Bye.